I can't pronounce that. Season two. Season two for you. Another Netflix review for you, and it's your boy Icon talking about a little Bringerton, because season four is upon us, and I've already done my review for season one, and now here's my review for season two. So before we get started, hit that notification bell, like it or subscribe. Check out my season one review. Season three obviously is coming up after this, and then for season four, we may do episode by episode reviews for season four. Today's video and wardrobe is sponsored by user Sharon766. With no holding back, loving what she does, check out her TikTok page and DM her for all requests and purchases. User Sharon766 on TikTok. So in season one, so as we know, the story is called Bridgerton because it's about one specific family. You know, the eldest daughter, she was the main focus of season one, where she met the Duke, Simon, and, you know, the two of them fell in love and they got married. Season two now, it focuses on the next daughter up, which is Eloise. But Eloise is not a fan of the whole process of courtmanship and having a husband. For those times specifically, she's a modern day feminist, and she believes that the whole courting and a woman needing a man for marriage so she'll be able to do things, she believes it's silly, and she wants to know how come a woman can't just do her own thing and have the privileges to be independent without a man. But she still has to do the thing because she lives under her mama roof, and her mom made her put the dress on and go before the queen. Now, the eldest brother in season one, when he was trying to get his eldest sister married, he assumed the leadership role as far as like trying to find a good suitor for his sister. Now he has to do the same for his other sister, but also he's at the point where he feels like he's ready to find a bride for himself, because he said as the Viscount of the family and as the leader of the family, he actually needs a bride. Like, he just can't be single forever because it's a bad look for society. So this particular season, he's in search of his bride. But the problem with him is the process of him trying to find a bride. It's very, it's like a job interview for him. He's not really trying to marry for love. He's just like, he said it, he even said it. He's like, I want someone that's beautiful, has a firm backside or like childbearing hips. She's intelligent, speaks well, can carry herself in society. Like, he basically put a resume like out there to build like the perfect woman. And he was basically, you know, then everybody was just like, oh, but why don't you just wait until you find the right person? Because he's like, love is a sham. He was like, he's, you know, the reason why to wed is for business purposes. So he's treating the whole thing like a business. And his mama put him on blast because she was like, oh, my son's looking for a bride this year. And then like all the women came over to him and everybody tried to talk to him. And like I said, he was interviewing them. Like, he basically put them on interviews. He was like, how many children do you want? He was like, how many languages do you speak? He was like, what do you do in this? Like, he was like I said, it was almost like he was auditioning for like an assistant instead of like trying to find a wife. But that's the whole thing. And because of that, because he was actually in search for a bride, his sister, Eloise, she ended up being able to weasel her way out of it. And she didn't really have to go through all the things necessary to find a husband, which she didn't really want to do anyway. So now that brings us to, you know, to the family, to the focal point family. Because again, in season one, the eldest sister, when she was trying to find her bride, well, her husband, she came across Simon, who was a black man. And she ended up marrying Simon, who was a black man. This particular season, it's focused on the Indians. We have an Indian family, Bali family. They said they came from India. They came all the way from India. The Shaman family, where it was Mary Shaman, who was cast out of society, her daughter Kate, and their other daughter, Edwina. And that's a new name for me. Like, that's because I'm like, how your mom named Mary, your sister named Kate, your name Edwina. Like that, I like that. That just doesn't mix. But apparently, the story is back in the day, Mary she met a man who was not of high society. He was actually a common man. He was a regular man. She fell in love with him, but he already had a daughter. And everybody forbid this marriage. Even the queen, was like, you can't marry him because you're of high society and he's a mere peasant. But she was in love. She fell in love with him and she ran away with him to India. So now she's coming back. And the reason why they're coming back, because the parents were disgraced when she ran off to India, with this peasant man. But now that, she has a daughter, because their daughter, Edwina, she's come of age and she's at the point now where she's ready to find a husband. The grandparents basically said, if you match Edwina up with a high society, high valued British gentleman, they would basically give her her inheritance, and then their family will be well off. Because I guess their family was like either mediocre or poor back in India. So the grandparents was like, as long as our granddaughter, like marries into like riches or whatever, we'll put you back in the will and we'll let you have the money. And because of this, because Kate, the eldest sister, because she isn't actually Mary's like real daughter, she was like her adopted daughter. She spent her entire life putting her, wants, her needs, her desires to the side and doing every single thing she can to make sure that her little sister Edwina ends up finding a husband. Now, just like in season 1, where the Viscount, when he was trying to find a suitor for his sister, he was basically being an asshole about it. He was being like very overbearing. Like, it was the sister's job to meet boys, to have conversations with them, to see if she could meet a proper person to marry. But her brother just kept getting in the way with everything, and he was like a pain in the ass. And then nobody wanted to court her because they didn't want to deal with the brother. And that was basically the same situation with Edwina and with Kate, because Kate is basically the Anthony of season 2. Like, when all the men tried to court her sister, Kate was just like, no, you're not good enough. Like, oh, you're too short, you're too tall. It's like, you don't value marriage. And like, and everybody was saying, like, the talk of the town was, they were just like, yo, like, they said, I would love to get to talk to Edwina. I would love to get to know her, but my God, like, the sister's unbearable. And, like, that kind of like, that created a problem, especially because the queen, she said that Edwina was the diamond of the season, and that was the woman that everybody should go after. Now, Anthony, the Viscount, because he's looking for a bride, and because the queen said that Edwina was the perfect person, he was just like, all right, bet. He was like, she's the person that I need, that I need to marry because she checks off all the boxes. But before he met her, he bumped into Kate in the forest. Like, they were riding horses together. The two of them had an unofficial horse race, and they got into a conversation. Now, because they're pretty much both the same person, they're both headstrong, they're both extremely independent, they don't take no for an answer, they don't like to lose. The two of them butted heads, from the moment that they met, because they were just like, oh, well, who are you? And they're like, well, who are you? She's like, well, I don't back down from no one. He was like, well, neither do I. And they're like all this thing. But the thing about it is, they were attracted to each other because they're basically the same person. They've never met somebody who can challenge them the way that each other challenged them. But then later on, when she found out that Anthony was the one that was trying to court her younger sister, she was like, no, I forbid this, because she knew that Anthony wasn't really trying to marry for love. She knew he was trying to marry just to have like a status symbol of having a wife. And she was like, no, she was like, my sister, she deserves better. She deserves to marry for love. And plus, Kate actually kind of liked him herself. So that's another reason why like she kind of pushed the whole thing off. But the Viscount's whole thing is, he wasn't thinking with his heart, he was thinking with his head. And he was just like, it just makes business sense to marry Edwina. So he kept pushing it and kept pushing it and kept pushing it. And then he was just like, look, he was like, I understand that everything goes through you. Everything, he said, in order for me to be with your sister, I have to deal with you. So he said, fine, I'll do whatever it takes and I'll deal with you. Now, the thing about it is, because he ended up dealing with the older sister, with Kate, just so he could spend time with Edwina, him spending so much time with Kate as like Edwina's like liaison, like him going through her, he spent so much time with Kate, he actually fell in love with Kate, and Kate fell in love with him. Like, they ended up getting to really like know each other, and then they like legitimately like fell in love with each other. And then when it got to like the end of the season, where the Viscount, he was just like, no, this cannot be. He's like, we can't be together. So he asked Edwina to marry him. She said yes. And then like right before the wedding, the two of them, like Kate and the Viscount, they were alone together. And then he was like, oh, he's like, you mustn't deny your feelings. And then she was like, you mustn't deny your feelings. And the two of them started kissing. Then they started kissing. Edwina busted them, and she found out that the two of them were actually in love with each other, and they've been kissing and like making googly eyes behind her back. So now Edwina's pissed. It turned into this whole scandal because everybody knew that the Viscount was supposed to get married, and then the wedding got called off, and it was like, oh my, like, why is the wedding called off? Dearest Rita. Lady Whistledown was all over it, with the gossip. But in the end, like, they basically, like, they had to like smooth things over, like, with the public shaming. But then at the end, they were just like, Edwina was like, well, look, she was like, like, she's like, you and my sister made a fool out of me behind my back. So she was like, we're definitely not getting married. And then she was mad at the sister and like mad at him. Kate felt like too much shame. And then they ended up going to a party at the Bridgerton house. Kate was outside on the lawn in the park. Anthony came outside, and then he was just like, he's like, the marriage to your sister is no more. And he was like, why must you deny your true feelings for me? And then she was like, I can't be with you because it's not proper and everything. And he was like, what about your happiness? She was like, screw my happiness. And then he was like, God, you're infuriating. And then the two of them started making out, and they made love in the park. So after they made love in the park, she woke up the next day and she felt like she had betrayed herself, betrayed the world. She got on a horse and started like riding around in the rain. He chased after her. She fell off of a horse, bumped her head, and then he took her, to the hospital. So now like she's in a coma. The girl ain't like Kate ain't waking up. Edwina feels bad because she was like, I told her that I hated her. Now she's in a coma. And then Anthony felt bad because he was just like, I spent so much time arguing with her instead of telling her like my true feelings. He ends up going. It's like Kate wakes up. Anthony goes down to the house and he's like, I want to propose marriage, because he was like, last night we made sweet love. And he was like, I'm a gentleman and you're a lady. And then she took it as the only reason why he's asking her to marry him is because, he deflowered her, or, like he took her virginity or whatever the case may be. Because again, back in those days, you couldn't kiss a girl, you couldn't have love, you couldn't make love to a girl, because if you ended up kissing or like having sex with somebody that you weren't married to, you automatically had to marry them. So she felt he only proposed out of a sense of duty, and then she said no. So he got upset because he felt some kind of way, and then his mama was talking to him. Edwina started talking to her sister, and she's like, you spent your whole life putting us first. But she's like, now take what you want, Kate. And she was like, do this for yourself. And then the mom told Anthony the same thing, and she was like, you're the head of the household. You've done so many things for our family. She's like, you need to start doing something for you. And then, Anthony went to Kate and he was like, look, at that point, Anthony stopped bullshit. He was like, yeah, I love you. He was like, look, fuck it. He said, like, you're infuriating. You're a pain in the ass. But, he was like, I love you and I can't stand to be without you. I need you every moment of every day. And then she was like, I love you too. But she was like, if we're together, she's like, I'll vex you every day. And he was like, yes, but it'll be the greatest vexing of all time. And it was actually pretty funny. And then the two of them finally made out. They got together. The queen ended up telling everybody that the reason why the marriage to the sister didn't work was because the queen was like, oh, I stopped that before it got worse because I knew that his feelings belonged to another. So the queen kind of like took she took the credit for that one. And then like everything was fine. And then she even ended up taking Edwina, and she was like, oh, Miss Edwina. She was like, I want to introduce you to my nephew, the prince. So it looks like Edwina is actually going to get to marry a prince. So she's happy. Everybody else is happy because Kate actually got to marry for love, and then like Anthony got to marry for love instead of and it's like I said, it's funny because she's like the most like pig-headed, strong-willed, like independent woman of all time, and that's exactly who he is. So like, this is the one situation where like opposites don't attract, where if anything, like the same personalities attract each other. And I said, and then they end up getting married. So I guess now Kate is the Viscountess. So she's in charge of the Bridgerton like fortune in the Bridgerton household. She's like the new lady of the house. Because remember, like, what was it, Penelope? the redheaded girl from season 1, like she's with Simon. So she's with, her name, because everybody's name starts with an alphabet. So she was Daphne. Like her name was Daphne. So Daphne, she's the Duchess, she's with the Duke, and now Kate, she's the Viscountess because she married the Viscount. Eloise, she ended up meeting a printer boy, and she kind of like fell in love with a printer boy, and then Lady Whistledown put her on blast, and she was like, oh, she's frolicking with a commoner, and then like that kind of like destroyed that whole thing. But yeah, but that was it. Like she kind of like squeezed, like Eloise basically like she skimmed through that one like by the skin of her teeth. So now in the next season, the next Bridgerton is up to bat, and Eloise now, she can, like she dodged that bullet, and it's all good. And I said there were some other things that happened too with like other characters, but like I said, since I'm doing like an entire season recap, the main point of the whole thing was the Indian family with their story with the Bridgertons, because this whole story is based on the Bridgerton family. That's why it's called the Bridgerton. Like each member, like every year, each member of the family is ready to take that step for marriage. And like I said, because Eloise wasn't going to do it, this particular story was about the eldest son who took forever to find his bride, and now he found him. So that was it. That was season 2, and thank you for tuning in. Overall, like I loved it. Like I enjoyed season 2. I liked season 1 and season 2 for different reasons. I like the fact that in season 1, between Daphne and Simon, Simon didn't want to have children and didn't want to be married, and Daphne knew nothing about marriage. So the whole dynamic of her being with a man for the first time, that like I like that because it was funny as hell because she didn't know what the hell she was doing. But in this particular situation where the roles were reversed, where like, you know, the Viscount, you know, Anthony, he basically like met his match, and then the whole thing with her like betraying her younger sister, like it was very good. And I like the fact that they infused like an Indian family into it. It wasn't just like, you know, some random like white family versus another random white family. They were like, you know, differences that got brought in, like cultural differences that got mentioned and got brought up, and it was nice to see. So black people took over season 1, the Indian people took over season 2, and Lord knows who's gonna be who's gonna be the focal point of season 3. So share your questions, comments, and concerns down below. What do you think about season 2 of Bridgerton? Are you excited for season 4 when it comes out? And after this, check out my review for season 3. Go back and watch my review for season 1, and I look forward to bringing you season 4 on Red Eyes Entertainment, Gentle Reader. So that is it. Until next time, for some more Bridgerton action. Take care, and we're out this bitch.